So yeah, like I said, I'm Michelle. Jillian's over here. I don't know. Jillian, did you want to say anything? Are you?
I mean, I can, sure. Yeah, I'm the society survey liaison, also working with the survey. And for folks, I guess this is kind of important, but for folks, especially students who are interested in getting more archaeological field training, lab training, we do have the training program in archaeology coming up in June of this year. So if you want more information, feel free to reach out to me, and I'm more than happy to give you information about that and answer any questions that you might have about it. Thanks, Michelle, for putting all this on.
All right, so we've got four panelists tonight. I'm really excited to hear all of their perspectives. They work in different aspects of archaeology, and I'm going to leave it to them to tell you what they do. But I guess we'll start just kind of how I'm seeing people on my screen. If Taylor, if you want to introduce yourself first.
Yeah, yeah, of course. I'm Taylor Greene. I'm an archaeological assistant at with the Arkansas Archaeological Survey. I work at the Southern Arkansas University Research Station in Magnolia, Arkansas. Um, I don't want to get ahead of myself, so I think that's probably suffice for an introduction.
All right, Duncan.
Sure. Excuse me. I am at University of Central Arkansas. I'm associate professor of anthropology and also the director of the Jamie C. Brandon Center for Archaeological Research.
All right, Jay.
Hey, everybody. I'm Jay Gray. I'm the Director of Operations in the Arkansas Office of Cultural Resource Analysts. CRA is a cultural resource management or CRM firm specializing in archaeological and architectural history services, usually for compliance with historic preservation laws.
All right, and then Billy.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I am Billie Burtrum. I am the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer and the Director of the Quapaw Nation Historic Preservation Program. We used to live in Arkansas. We are now housed on a reservation, or headquartered, I guess I should say. That sounded funny, in Northeast Oklahoma. And we really appreciate working with the survey and all the good things they do for us.
All right, cool. So we'll kind of get into the questions. So the first one is, what was your first experience in archaeology, or how did you get interested in it? Why did you want to do this job? And so we'll just kind of go in the same order, but we'll start with Duncan this time.
Okay. Well, I came into archaeology in a non-traditional sense, which I'll kind of address later when we talk about work background and so forth. But my first experience with archaeology was with field school when I was an undergraduate at Texas State University. I went to a field school in the Texas Panhandle with Dr. Britt Bousman, and then I came home for a week and then went off to Belize for another field school with Dr. Jim Garber. And then about 2 weeks later, I went off to Etowah with Dr. Kent Riley and did geophysics. So it was all at once within a matter of like 6 months. That was my first experience to archaeology.
All right, Jay, if you want to go next.
Oh, sure. Sorry, forgot which order I was in. I studied anthropology as an undergrad at NSU in my hometown of Natchitoches, Louisiana. Dr. P. Gregory had created a 4 subfields department in NSU at the time, and his teaching styles and stories were, they really brought archaeology and anthropology, to life for us all. My first experience in archaeology, like a lot of students, was in the field school at NSU, which, ended up writing that up as a special studies, project the next semester. But the thing that made me want to pursue an archaeology career was the following year I was hired by the National Park Service's Southeast Archaeological Center to work on with the development of the Cane River Heritage Area. So we did auger testing, an auger testing survey across a couple of South Natchitoches Parish plantations, trying to locate former buildings and kind of understand the site layouts better. I did that for 2 field seasons and got to participate in a lot of cool excavations there on various, existing buildings in and around certain existing buildings, and help to, locate a cemetery and so on. So it was a lot of really exciting stuff for an undergrad student. Being outside, physical work of it was great to me. But I think on that project, seeing the sort of like how material culture sort of is distributed across these sites, and you can see, of course, like things that relate to different activities, but also like, different socioeconomic aspects on a plantation, the types of materials you find near slave quarters versus an overseer's house, and that sort of thing really, really brought archaeology to life for me. So that's what made me want to pursue a career.
It helps if I actually don't mute myself. So this is actually my first job in archaeology. Things work just a little different in the tribal world. We tend to focus more on, do you have the skills, but do you have the cultural and community knowledge? So I came into this job as the deputy director, and then when my predecessor, Everett Bandy, who probably everyone here already knows, moved up to executive director of culture for our tribe, I moved up to our director position and our TIPO position.
And I as far as like how I first got interested in archaeology, maybe as a bit of a stereotypical answer, I was interested as a young kid, with my parents taking me to a Civil War reenactment that happened every year about 15 minutes from our house growing up in Kentucky. And when I got into my undergraduate program, I actually started off in engineering and spent several years in engineering before eventually not enjoying it anymore and pursuing the dream career I had when I was 8 years old. Um, but my actual first I'll say field experience was at the Fox Farm site in northern Kentucky with the Kentucky Archaeological Survey in spring break 2016, and really just completely sold my love for the field.
Cool. All right. So our next question then is, what is your educational background and what education do you need to do your job? And we'll start with Jay on this one.
Okay, sure. So I got a bachelor's in anthropology from NSU in Louisiana, and I've got a master of arts in anthropology from the University of Memphis, which had an emphasis on public archaeology. So in cultural resource management, a master's degree is the minimal educational level to get hired as a staff archaeologist for most CRM firms, whereas a bachelor's degree is the minimum to work as an archaeological technician for most CRM firms.
For me, it's going to be very different than probably everyone else here. But my educational background is I have a bachelor's degree in business administration, which is not at all related to archaeology. However, it does help me a lot in policy and research and developing processes for our department, which most of what we do is compliance, so that comes in handy. If I was to go back to college, I would definitely be getting an archaeology or anthropology. I never realized that was, in our part of the world, that's not really a job you think about. That's like the people who go to the tombs, it's far away things. So, but if we were hiring a TIPO, like if I picked any new TIPO today to replace me, we would definitely be looking for someone with an archaeology or anthropology background, because we end up doing a lot of hands-on training in the office to teach ourselves, how to read these surveys and what does this actually look like in the field. So that is something we would look for. But again, as a tribe, we also lean very heavy on people who can look at the archaeology from a cultural background and can step up and know the history of our people and be able to say, I know that's what that looks like to you, but this is the evidence that we have, and this is how we view that, and can advocate for the people.
As I previously mentioned, I have a bachelor's of science, or as I previously mentioned, I started in engineering, which gave me enough credit hours that I wound up getting a bachelor's of science in anthropology from the University of Kentucky. And I eventually went on to get a master's of arts in anthropology from the University of Mississippi. For the position that I'm currently in, the archaeological assistant position here with the survey, a bachelor's degree is required. So I'm a little I'm a little bit of an overachiever for the job.
so as I mentioned, I'm kind of non-traditional. I have my original degree is an associate's degree in occupational safety and health. I'll come back to that later. And I found myself in a variety of corporate positions. I'll also come back to that later. And so I'm a non-trad. I didn't go back to school until I was in my 30s, I guess. And I got my undergraduate degree from Texas State University in San Marcos. And I went there initially because I've always had an interest in history. And so that's what I initially majored in was history. And I took a class, an anthropology class as an elective from Kent Riley. And I was really amazed at all these things that I did not learn in high school. And so I pursued that and completed my undergraduate BA in anthropology there at Texas State. And then through Kent Riley, I was introduced to George Sabo and Caddo culture as a whole. And so that's why I wanted to come up to Fayetteville. And that's why master's and PhD from University of Arkansas there in Fayetteville. As far as what you need for my position, an MA is a minimum requirement, and that's usually for a lecturer position, and a PhD for a tenure track professor position.
All right. Everybody got to answer, right? I'm like losing track. All right. So my next question then is, what is your work background and how did you get into the position that you're currently in? And that's kind of wrapped up in the previous question, but if there's anything you want to add, and we'll start with Billie this time.
So oddly, my previous position was actually in youth suicide and drug use prevention, which is not at all related. But when that position was ending because it was grant funded and this position was open, I'm a huge research nerd. I will research anything and be in the holes forever. So that helps, but I also focus a lot on advocating for our programs and our people. And that's really kind of what we look for in our program, is being able to speak with other communities about our people.
So this actually makes my fourth archaeology job. However, I will say when only having 3 semesters of anthropology courses as an undergrad, when I first graduated, I didn't quite have the experience in spite of seeking as much independent research and field opportunities and having a field school as well. I didn't quite have enough experience under my belt to begin working as an archaeological technician, or at least what a lot of people were seeking for archaeological technicians at the time. So I ended up working odd jobs and spending my weekends volunteering with the Forest Service for about a year before I got my first archaeological technician with position with the Shasta Trinity National Forest in Northern California, and then working with a couple of different consulting firms in and around Kentucky and West Virginia, and having a thing going in my master's degree and now working this job, which I'll also admit was a position I was seeking ever since I finished my bachelor's degree. I think it's a cool job, and I've wanted to work here for a very long time.
So my work background, as I alluded, I came in late to archaeology. I spent about 10 years in Austin. I grew up in Austin, and Texas, and I spent about 10 years there in corporate sales, hardware and software sales. And I worked at Dell and Apple and all these big players in Austin. And that was in the 90s. And I decided that it was time for a change. So that's when I went to school full time and pursued that. While I was at Texas State, I was desperately seeking experience and opportunities. As I mentioned, I had did some field work and so forth. And through those connections, through field work, I was put in touch with Tim Pertola, and I did some shovel bombing, some work with him in East Texas here and there. So he kind of gave me some experience in doing some initial kind of CRM work. And then when I got into graduate school, I would pick up little contract jobs here and there. But I always knew that I wanted to go into teaching and at a university level. And so one of the main things that I needed to find out and get under my belt was some teaching positions. And so Jamie Brandon was the archaeologist at SAU at the time, station archaeologist at SAU. And he was able to get me a teaching position in the honors college down there. So I taught a Southeastern Indians course, which was fun because I would drive from Fayetteville 5 hours, teach a course for 3 hours, turn around and drive back home for 5 hours in the same day. And then later, Mel Zabecki was working at teaching at Fort Smith, and she left to go work at Parkin at the time, and she handed the baton to me and so I was adjuncting at Fort Smith as well. So I had some field experience a little bit, but I knew CRM wasn't where I wanted to go. I knew I wanted to go into academics, and so I was really pursuing some teaching components, and that's certainly necessary if you're going to want to get into teaching.
I think it's my turn, right?
Mm.
Yeah. Okay. So when I finished undergrad, I went to work as an archaeological technician at a CRM firm. And after about 2 years of shovel bumming, I decided to enroll in a graduate program. I actually did want to, pursue a career in CRM, and I went to the University of Memphis, which had an applied anthropology track that Dr. Charles McNutt had established a specialization in public archaeology and CRM for. So while I was attending that program, I had an assistantship working at Chickalisa Archaeological Site Museum. And I ended up working on a project there that I wrote up for my master's project. I also worked for a CRM firm while I was in graduate school. And I mean, I would go out and work on the weekends. I knew a couple of technicians I could call that would go out and do projects in North Mississippi. And, one semester when I didn't have classes on Thursdays and Fridays, and I was probably supposed to be doing more school-related stuff, I would drive. I'd leave Memphis at 4 a.m. on Thursday morning and drive up to Southeast Missouri for a data recovery project that I'd work for a day and a half on, before coming back. So I was just always trying to keep my hands dirty in archaeology as much as I could, just trying to, stay involved wherever I could in the field. So after grad school, I went on to work as a staff archaeologist on large-scale surveys, mostly on military lands. Eventually, I found myself working as a project manager, overseeing multi-site, phase 2 National Register testing projects. Sometimes I'd have that project going on while I had other crews out doing large-scale surveys. So my workload just kind of kept increasing. And I did some data recoveries on sites, that we'd recorded and tested. So this work took me to North Carolina. I did about 10 years of work at Fort Bragg out there. And at that time, CRM projects there were being treated, like research projects. We were kind of interested in identifying site types, picking the sites apart to look at inter-site variability and, use those patterns to understand, just changing patterns and like settlement and mobility strategies during different time periods. It was super satisfying. It was really exciting work. I really enjoyed it. But eventually I had an opportunity at CRA, the company I'm with now, that was closer to home in Louisiana. And so a guy that I'd gone to graduate school with and worked with in CRM for years had opened up an office in North Louisiana. And so I was hired to help him establish a presence in the region. And so I went to work as a principal investigator for CRA there. And I'd oversee, a few staff archaeologists that would go out and do their own field projects. And I'd help them write the reports. I put together most of the budgets and proposals for that office. And then when the director there in around 2016 decided to move closer to home himself, I took over the directorship at that office and worked there until 2024, when I decided to open an office for CRA in Northwest Arkansas. So that's how I got to where I'm currently at. It seemed like you guys froze up for a minute. Did you hear everything I said, or was I frozen up to you?
I heard everything.
Okay, cool.
All right. So our next question, and I feel like all of your answers is going to be like, no day is the same, but what does a normal day or typical day look like in your current position? What kind of things do you do? And if it's different every day, just give us some examples of some things. And we're starting with Taylor again.
Yeah. So it's different every day. But specifically in my position, it can be something like going out and doing field work, either within our station area in Southwest Arkansas or going to another station area to help out a different station who's working on a project. Personally, right now, I have a little bit of freedom to like pick and choose some of my own research projects while I'm here, and I'm currently doing a large ceramic analysis. So most of my days at the moment are looking at a lot of potsherds. But I also get to write my own reports and just do a lot of general like assistance. Like there are days where I'll come in and I'll uh, do my best to like clean the lab and sweep the floors and make sure that it's just that everything is clean because that's all of helping making sure that this station can run, which is primarily my job as an assistant. So it ranges from as simple as sweeping a floor to as complex as I'm looking at X tens of thousands of potsherds. What does this say about the community I'm researching?
Here at UCA, we have what's called a 4-4 teaching load. So I teach 4 classes a semester. And so, obviously my days are variable. I teach class in face-to-face on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I have 2 asynchronous online courses that I teach that are kind of, they're ongoing. And so that's my teaching capacity. And it's sprinkled with preparing lectures and reviewing my notes and those kinds of things. I also work a lot with students doing directed studies. And so, I've got an archaeology lab here. And so students will come in and work on various projects and so forth. So there's a little bit of one-on-one with students, but then I also do what you may call outreach with students that are just generally interested. And so there's a lot of traffic flow coming in my office regularly. And then I do a lot of work with community partners as well. And so I find myself off campus and try to engage students with those kinds of things also. So, teaching, doing normal administrative things, email and so on and so forth. Grading is a big component to what I do. And, just my own research in general, I try to plug that in where I can to kind of give my own self some sanity and move away from teaching sometimes and move into my own research interests.
Okay, I think I'm next up. Okay, so in CRM, especially at smaller companies or small offices like I work for a relatively large company, people have to wear multiple hats. So, as you said, weeks can be, fairly different from one to the next. But, each week I start out just by laying out a calendar, a set of deadlines and, goals for the week. It usually involves pretty mundane stuff like personal management stuff, putting together summaries of our projects for the office staff and our executive team, approving hours and expenses from the previous week, reviewing project budgets, to make sure they're on task and everything. I do customer relations, so I typically have virtual meetings, phone calls, emails with at least a few clients each week, put together budgets and proposals for their projects. I assist our staff archaeologists and lab staff with understanding the scopes of works on projects, peeking in to see how things are going periodically and helping them along. I help them write reports, sometimes write reports myself. I review all the reports in our office before, the office that I'm in before they go to our publications departments. Some more complex or interesting projects, I end up having to go out for, sometimes extended amounts of time or, just occasional field visits. I perform the analysis of, ceramics and the diagnostic lithic materials typically. And then when, of course, there are deadlines to meet and our staff archaeologists are already busy, I have to throw on my field hat and just go out and do field projects sometimes. Conversely, at times when the work is slow, I have to ramp up my review of requests for proposals from agencies. I'd spend more time doing marketing research, making contact with potential clients, attending business meetings and so on. So, since part of my responsibility is make sure everybody else is busy, I don't really slow down all that much for the most part.
It's really vary in our office, which is great because it prevents boredom. We receive over 300 projects every month. which is a whole lot of archaeological surveys to review. So the majority of our time is spent for our compliance specialist in reviewing those projects that come from, I think last month I counted 80 different agencies. So they're all different. They all have different standards, and making sure they're in compliance. For myself and my deputy director, on top of that compliance review, we do the higher level reviews that maybe are a step above where our compliance specialists are. We're having programmatic agreement and MOA conversations with agencies, helping to draft those. We're doing office management tasks, supervision, developing policies and procedures for the office, ensuring that all of our staff is receiving the training they need to do the best job they possibly can. And then we're also doing research on side projects or lots and lots of collaboration meetings with the federal government. Those are always fun. We've made some really good relationships there, but it does take a lot of time. And then there are other days, like today, we had 2 team members who were out in the field monitoring a project at our powwow grounds, which is highly important. They're not fully surveyed, and they have been there for over 150 years. So that's, something very important to us. We had 2 other who were working in the office doing the daily stuff. And then we had 2 office members who were out in the community serving our people, because everyone in our office, we have 6 people, all but one of us is Quapaw, and the one who's not, she looks Quapaw to us. We count her. We are very involved in our community. So there was a funeral today, and we had 2 people out working that. And that is not unusual for our office at all. It's for everybody to kind of be going a different way and focusing on something different. There are also other days, like with the monitoring, when we're able to just be out and go. Like at the end of the month, we'll be with Jillian and Michelle down in Arkansas cooking up some food. We love doing that. We're going to talk Quapaw stuff. We're going to cook food. If we go anywhere, we're feeding people. Come out, we'll feed you. I think I'm making nankapan and beef and hominy, so come on out. And then we do a lot of outreach in our community. Right now, we're running a book club. We're developing traveling trunks that will go out into the community to provide education. And we're also have started a cemetery preservation program. We have over 28 cemeteries within our reservation that are not well documented. Our reservation is home to a Superfund site that had lots and lots of mining companies on it. So some of these cemeteries have been encroached by chat piles, and there are like huge piles of mining tailings like right on top of them. And so that's a high focus for us right now. But we just spend a lot of time doing whatever we can to serve not only our community, but to ensure that we are providing the highest level compliance. And that looks vastly different every month. And we kind of like that because we love our archaeologist friends, we love surveys, but our eyes start to burn after a while. So it comes in really handy.
All right. So this is my last question, then I'm going to turn it over to Jillian. But how do you apply, or where are job openings at your organization listed? And then what is kind of the salary range you could expect in your job? So basically, like, where would someone look for your job online or wherever? And we're starting with Duncan again.
Okay,
I think.
I lost track. Well, there's essentially 3 different kind of positions that are available. There's adjunct positions, there's lecturer positions, and then there's tenure track positions. And in terms of where those announcements are made, obviously the UCA on the website and through the portal, and then all kinds of different organizations and pick those up, and so they're available through different job searches and so forth. So an adjunct position is not a full-time position. An adjunct position is usually hired to teach 1 class or 2 classes, or it's based on a need. And so they're paid by the course itself. A lecturer position is, again, often staffed by somebody with at least a master's degree and some experience in teaching. And then the tenure track, obviously, as I said before, requires a PhD. I came into this position, kind of glossed over that in an earlier question, but I came into this position, I was hired as a visiting assistant professor. So I was hired on a 1 year kind of like probationary period. And that's because there was a previous professor that was here that had left. And so they didn't want to commit to somebody just yet. So I was on for 1 year. Then I was hired as a lecturer for 2 years, and then they brought me in as a tenure track. So I kind of came in the back door, so to speak. I wasn't hired necessarily right away as a tenure track professor. So there's a lot of different scenarios, adjunct positions, a few $1,000s per class, and which obviously is not a lot of money. The lecturer positions and PhD positions, it ranges based on the type of university that you're going to go to. If you're at a teaching-based university or a research-based, state-level research-based institution, like University of Arkansas versus UCA, for example. It also depends certainly on geography and the cost of living and so forth. But a general range for a starting position is anywhere 50 to 70, kind of in that bucket, depending on a variety of different scenarios. So that's a kind of a general wage there. Now, if you were in business, that'd be a different wage, okay? But in anthropology, that's more the wage.
Okay, so you can find our job opportunities on CRA's website. We cross-post them to shovel bombs and social media sites like LinkedIn and Facebook. And we have an online job portal that can be accessed from our job opportunities page in which people can apply for available positions. Salary ranges in CRM, of course, it depends on the job. CRM wages and salaries can also vary pretty considerably from one company to another. So I asked somebody to pull CRA's current rates for our various education and experience levels to give a general sense of what one might expect in CRM. So someone just starting out with a bachelor's degree could expect an hourly range, at least with CRA, of around $19 to $20+ per hour, depending on experience as an on-call technician. So these are not full-time jobs. They're hired on a project basis. So this is shovel bumming. For MA level graduates with no prior experience, one can expect a salary of about 48 to 53 currently per year. I'm sorry, 48 to 53,000 per year salary currently. For those with some level of experience that just received their MA, 52 to 58,000 per year salary can be expected. For a new MA with a few years of prior CRM experience, including project oversight, one can expect about 55 to 60,000 per year. And PhDs are likely to get anywhere from about 50 to 80,000, depending on what the position is they're being hired for, their skill sets, marketing skills, and so on. So a PhD with zero CRM experience and a pretty generalized expertise would probably get closer to 50,000, whereas a PhD with extensive experience in CRM and a useful skill set for specialty analysis, writing, or so on might get closer to 75 to 80,000 per year.
Our job postings are posted to our tribal website, Quapaw Nation. I believe they're also posted to, we have like a newsletter website called the Quapaw Post that tells you all the things going on. I think they post them there as well. We have 3 different types of positions within our department. We are what most tribes consider a medium size or larger size TIPO office. There's 6 of us. That's a little shocking for some people, but most TIPO offices are one person wearing like 12 different hats and running crazy. So there's 6 of us, and we're pretty happy with that right now because we can do so much more. We have compliance specialists. We have a GIS specialist whose job is to take all this wonderful information to make these fantastic maps. And then we have myself and my deputy director. Our positions usually start about 35,000 and go up to 80. We have a very nice benefits package, good work-life balance, but it makes it hard for us to find, like when I was hiring the GIS specialist, we interviewed a few archaeologists. And because of the area we live in and the limitations on what we have for salaries, it does make it hard to find someone who is an archaeologist or an anthropologist who can work for that, because that is, that does kind of make it hard on folks when we're at the very northeast corner of Oklahoma. We don't have a whole lot going on here. Cost of living's good. But when you've just graduated with a master's degree or a doctorate, kind of hard to make those budgets. But we're hoping that we'll be able to grow that budget soon and get us some archaeology experienced folks in the office. So.
So for the archaeological survey, we post our jobs on our website as well, and also through the university. I know the University of Arkansas system also has a job posting site. I don't remember what it's called. Please forgive me. Um, for the archaeological assistant position, uh, I I'm fairly certain right now it's starting at about $35,000 a year. I was hired at 30,000, and then was brought up to current the current starting salary after uh my first year working here. Yeah.
Okay, it's my show now. All right. So we're going to start with the next question. So what are some skills, experiences, or classes that are desirable or necessary in your current position versus for new hires? So the position that you're in now versus when you kind of started, what are the differences between classes and other experiences that people might expect to need to have in order to get those jobs? And we'll start with Jay.
Thanks. Sorry about that. Okay, so for my position, I need to have a pretty decent understanding of the processes involved in the laws that we work under, especially the National Historic Preservation Act and the National Environmental Policy Act. So I often represent the company I work for on teams that consist of environmental and engineering companies, and I have to understand our part in complying with the laws and the processes. So it's also important to have an understanding of contracting and subcontracting. The ability to write well and to communicate verbally are critical skill sets in CRM at this level. I also think anyone working in any supervisory capacity needs to have good interpersonal skills. It's also helpful having experience with a wide variety of CRM project types, working in various capacities. And so when budgeting projects and putting together work plans and scopes of works and so on, it's important to understand what you might expect for projects, since we work under contract. And so we kind of have to meet our budgets. And so, just for instance, if you're figuring out how long a project's going to take, there's a lot of things to take into consideration, project access, types of soils you're dealing with, how deep you have to dig, how long it takes to screen that dirt, potential for archaeological sites, how much material are you going to find, the processing and analysis time for the recovered materials, how long will it take to put together a report of findings, curate your materials, and so on. So there's a lot to, experience is very helpful, I think, with a variety of project types. So for new hires with a bachelor's degree that may be looking for work as a technician, I'd say that a basic understanding of soils and having attended some artifact ID classes are going to be super helpful. There's always a lot to learn in archaeology. And since the learning curve is pretty steep, just a general enthusiasm for learning and getting out in the field and lab, that's going to be super important too. From our perspective, it's nice working with people at the BA level that are planning to go back for their master's degree, because those people are usually trying to learn everything they can, and they tend to be hardworking. So at the MA level, new hires should really have a pretty good understanding of soils and artifact analysis, and some experience with GIS is helpful. A general understanding of CRM laws is also helpful. And in general, students should make every effort to diversify their skill set at the MA level if they're interested in a career in CRM. Learning GIS, database management, geophysical capabilities, understanding anything digital today is helpful. But the more hats you can wear in a CRM firm, the greater value you're going to be.
Within our office, we have the 4 different positions. So everything's a little different. With most new hires start as our compliance specialist, where they're reviewing Section 106 reviews on a daily basis. So when we hire them in, I prefer if they have a firm understanding of those, like 50 laws we follow under that, right? We got all these laws we follow whenever we're doing compliance, from ARPA to everything. But we can teach them that. So what I really strive to look for when I'm hiring a compliance specialist is somebody who has very strong reading comprehension and is able to quickly learn the information we're giving them and to process that. Because what we end up looking at is everything that Jay's already done. Actually, I think I have a couple from Jay on my desk right now. So we're looking at all of that, and I need to know that I can teach them what that means and they can read it and they can understand that, yes, okay, he did that the way that we agree with, and we're all good, because we have never actually gone out and done the actual work. So we need to understand that portion. I also need them to be able to communicate effectively and clearly with other agencies. Maybe they need to call Michelle and say, hey, we're not understanding what's happening here. Or they need to call someone like Jay and say, can you explain what this means? And they need to understand, or be able to do that clearly so he can understand it. My GIS specialist, we prefer that she have an understanding of GIS. She actually came to us from the Army, where she did physical surveying. So she had the skill set, she was just using it in a different way. And she has been very quickly able to take that and look at what she needs to do and turn it over. So again, a high ability to educate themselves, or not themselves, but take the education we give them and incorporate that into their daily work. For myself and my deputy director, a lot of what we do is on training other people, on communicating with not only folks who are doing the same type of work we are, but higher ups in Washington, D.C., who maybe don't really understand what it looks like down by the time it gets to us, building relationships with outside agencies. The tribal to federal to state relationship building can be very different depending on who you're working with, what part of the country you're working with, or even, and we're seeing less and less of this, but what generation of the workforce we're working with, that makes a drastic difference. And then also being able to obtain these trainings, we give everyone in depth. They really hate it when I do it because it's like a week-long project. They go over every single line of 36 CFR 800. They have to know it by heart. Like, we do it all the time. Map reading, we do a lot of map reading trainings within our office. And then we get to do fun trainings sometimes, like the end of last month. Everyone got to go up to ISACE in Illinois, and we learned how to do ground penetrating radars at Cahokia and what that looks like. And it has greatly benefited our program, because before we're getting these and we're kind of looking at them going, okay, I think I know what you mean. I think I know how you got here. But when I can send people to that hands-on training and they came back so excited and engaged, and they're so enthused to see these, because before they're just sometimes they're just like green blobs to us, and we have to call and say, tell me what I'm looking at, but just being able to take new information and comprehend that and turn it into something is the most vital skill that I can ask for in my workforce, because I can find you the training, but I can't make you love learning the subject. So I think that's probably the biggest thing we go for.
So in the last year, just trying to think of some of the skills I've cultivated and I had to use, everything from GIS to the various field methods I learned both working in CRM and as a part of my field school. Graphic design, I've had to do a little bit of that for the job. A lot of just the sort of book reading, article reading, like academic style research to make sure that I'm understanding what I'm doing and not going to turn around and do a bad research project. That's all stuff I've done in the last year or so. So if you're looking for this sort of position, what kind of skills you need, definitely need a field school under your belt. Definitely need to learn how to read research articles and learn how to read them and parse them and figure out what method works best for you to understand them. Once upon a time, I used to print off every single research article I read so I could write physical notes on it to make sure that I'm trying to help myself remember it. But also, at least with this particular position in the survey, there's a lot of opportunity to learn, to get hands-on training and skill and time to learn this while working. It's obviously desired to have it before you get here, but it's also one of these jobs where you're not expected to know how to do every single thing. And at least with the survey, everybody that works here is very willing to help you learn how to be better, be a better archaeologist.
For my current position, we are kind of evaluated on three criteria. One, since I'm at a teaching institution, teaching is primary, then research falls secondary, and then scholarship, or excuse me, scholarship, research, and then service falls third. And so in terms of skill set now for teaching is, I've been at UCA for 10 years now, time flies, but it's understanding best pedagogical practices. That's both for me in an online capacity as well as face-to-face. I need to be quite diverse in what I'm teaching. I teach anything from introduction to anthropology to students that are not anthropology majors or minors. It's just something that's required on our lower division core. So I have to try to get those students engaged, just understanding, thinking anthropologically in their daily lives. And then I teach higher level courses too to students that I hope to push towards archaeology in their careers, whether it be academic or whether it be CRM. So that's one skill set that I've had to refine over the last 10 years, is just the teaching and engaging students. I mentioned I do a lot of directed studies, particularly with students that have an interest in pursuing archaeology as a career, so they can get a lot more hands-on experience outside the classroom and work in the lab here and so forth, and field work as well. I have a field school and give them opportunities to do that. The scholarship and research is, publications, and, they quantify that in terms of like, how many have you done this year and so forth. So that could be, pedagogical, like how I would teach students doing archaeology, but in my case, it's more my own research interests. And then the service aspect is serving on committees here either at the university on multiple levels. So either in my department, my college, or through the university. And then also community-based service as well, which is more where I lean my skill set towards, is working with community members on different projects, cemetery recording projects. I work with the Faulkner County Museum a lot, and get the community engaged in what archaeologists do in that aspect. For those new hires coming in, I think diversity is key. I mentioned having a teaching background or some exposure to teaching. That worked for me. I said I taught at SAU for a semester, and then I taught 2 or 3 semesters at Fort Smith. And when this position was made available, they needed somebody that could teach biological anthropology and teach North American archaeology, right? And I just luckily had taught those courses at Fort Smith. And so those are very diverse courses. In a research institution, you may be hired for your specialty and not necessarily in terms of your diversity. So I pride myself on the fact that the students that I try to work with that want to go into archaeology, they're not necessarily, they might not, this is counterproductive to what we're talking about here, but they might not necessarily go into academics. More likely, they're going to go into CRM. So my focus is teaching them applied approaches and how they can understand, kind of like Tyler says, how can they do research and how can they read reports? How can they digest this information and apply it in a much more specific way than kind of in a theoretical way, in an academic way.
Thank you guys so much. I think those are very helpful responses, especially in terms of career starting out versus kind of where you guys are at now. So I think seeing the difference is really beneficial for students. So thank you for your thoughtful responses. We'll start this question off with Billie, but in your own words, what guidance would you guys provide to young professionals starting out in their careers? So what can they expect, and what advice do you guys have for them in their young, budding, beautiful archaeology careers?
I have 2 pieces, and at risk of sounding like I'm beating a dead horse, don't stop learning. There is so much to learn in this field, and there is so much that is available to us now that just keep learning. Every conference you go to, even if a topic doesn't sound great, pop in instead of heading out to the pool, because you're going to pick up, maybe it was a technique, or maybe it was just oh, hey, wait, that made me think about this different. There's always going to be something that helps you to be better at your job, which I think is what we all want to do great at this job. We all want to know everything we can and be as helpful as we can. And the second is build great relationships. We try very hard at our office to build good relationships with our partners because we can't always get there. I don't know how many times a month we call the survey and we're like, hey, we need to do this and we need help. Or, we call somebody up in Indiana and we need help. And when you've built those relationships, you have those people there to support you and we understand each other. But the archaeology world is becoming so full of wonderful, intelligent, passionate people who will support you in your career and who will help you to learn and mentor you, and just really focus on building those strong relationships because it will really help you to become the best that you can be and to help not only your own career, but your research and what you're offering to the world through what you do as well.
So I previously mentioned that I only had 3 semesters of anthropology as an undergraduate. And despite having the field school and whatever experience I could try to get as an undergrad, when I graduated with my degree, I had a lot of trouble finding an archaeology position. And what saved me, genuinely, what got me my first job was volunteering. So my main piece of advice, at least for the undergraduates here, is start volunteering before you graduate because it will help you build a lot of experience. It will help you get a lot of hands-on experience either in the field, in the lab, and I guarantee you nearly every single PhD archaeologist that you know needs a volunteer to help them do something and would probably more than welcome your assistance. So in short, volunteer because it's a really good way to get a lot of hands-on experience really quickly. And like Billy said, it helps you build these relationships with people already in the field who will then later want to help you move on and move to different positions and help you also succeed.
Yeah, my guidance would be similar in that, well, first, be patient, yet, but at the same time, be confident in yourself and what you're doing. And to volunteer, to do service. I strongly encourage my students to go to the Society Dig, for example. Even though I offer a field school, but the Society Dig is an opportunity for them to network with a lot of archaeologists in the state. So they get to know a lot of people, they get their names in front of these people, and then they get to network with these people that may not necessarily be from Arkansas, and they have their connections out of state as well. So networking is key, volunteering, just doing service, internships is a good avenue and approach. I've had a few students of mine that have done internships at different CRM firms and have been hired full-time through those firms. So just being patient, don't rush it, but at the same time, when the opportunity presents itself, be confident in the fact that you can do that and to pursue it. And through your networking skills that you've generated over your 3 or 4 years or 5 or 6 years as an undergraduate.
So I would also say, getting experience, as much experience in various types of projects as you can, field schools, volunteer opportunities, like you guys pointed out, or paid opportunities are great ways to get experience. When reviewing resumes for potential hires, having prior field experience and particularly experience with the type of project we're hiring for goes a really long ways. And so the more, different types of experience you can get, the better off you are, I feel like. There are internships, and employee opportunities at CRM firms, and, having prior CRM experience for a CRM firm is very good. I agree with you guys too about networking. That was not on my answers here, but showing up to those volunteer opportunities to meet the people that are active in your archaeological community is a great point, a good idea. Also diversity of classes outside anthropology can be helpful on your resume. Skill development like GIS, surveying, geology, and soil geography, history, and so on. So if you get training in something else, it makes you more valuable if you can wear more hats than just field tech or just field supervisor. You can develop a specialty like ceramic analyst, bioarchaeologist, geoarchaeologist, GIS modeling specialist, GIS modeling specialist, or you can go hard generalist, which is to do every type of main artifact analysis, but leave the more complex and bigger projects to experts. But be able to do some general mapping and definitely focus on writing skills. A strong writer is going to be of more interest and more likely to land a job, even if they don't have a specific analytical skill. But yeah, you want to make yourself invaluable to your employer is a good rule of thumb. But I think in CRM. Excuse me.
Thank you guys, and thank you to Duncan for the shameless shout out for the training program. I appreciate it. So the next question, and we're starting with Taylor, which I don't know if I'm gonna like his answer, but is it difficult or possible to have work-life balance in your position, and why or why not?
Is it possible? Yes. Is it difficult? Also, yes. And that's just because there's just always more work to be done. I mean, this is an example of that right now, where it's 8 o'clock on a work day, and I'm literally in my office. This is, but it's not like it's necessarily bad. At least here I work with people that I enjoy. I enjoy the work I do, and I work with people I enjoy working with. Um, and so, despite the fact that it is difficult to have that work-life balance, I get to hang out with cool people and do cool things, and it makes it a little easier. Um, when I've had a week where I sit down and like I'm paid salary, so I don't have to keep track of my hours per se. But when I sit down and track out my hours and go, "Ooh, that was an 80-hour week," okay. But uh, outside of like active field seasons, I think it's a lot easier to maintain that balance because it's a lot easier to go, hey, it is Friday at 5 o'clock. I'm going home. I'm not looking at my email again until Monday at 8 o'clock when I get into the office. And that's, at least in my position, that's possible. I know for some of the PhDs in the survey, they're answering emails at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I know they should be asleep instead.
Well, when I first started here, I obviously felt that I needed to prove myself, certainly. And so, and because I was visiting, I was down here in Conway by myself. My wife was still up in Fayetteville. So I was kind of like, on my own, so to speak, to just go all in. And so for the first couple years, it was difficult to make those separations, working weekends, preparing classes, not so much now, but to do a class for one day of an hour-long lecture would have taken me like almost a day to create 1 hour of lecture. So it was a lot of work getting all that stuff together. And then plus there was the tenure track, the tenure reviews and all those things that had to happen. And so those take place at 3 years, you have a mid-tenure review, and at 6 years you have a tenure review. And that requires a lot of work and so forth. And so, so it required a lot of navigating those two things. 10 years later, I'm in a much more different space in terms of My commitments, I have email hours that I tell my students, if you reply to me after a certain time, I'm not going to reply to you, so on and so forth, because life work balance is much more important to me than it was when I first started here and I was all in. So it's possible. I have faculty that are, answering emails 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And so it's just how you navigate it and how you adjust your priorities.
So I also would say that it's challenging to strike a healthy work-life balance in CRM in general. And I think that's the nature of working for a business that's engaged in contracting in general. So we often don't get to decide our own deadlines. We rely on our clients for work. We have to keep them happy in terms of meeting their deadlines, and the budgets, and so on. And so, but I think that, time management, like Duncan said, I think it gets easier in some ways because time management is a skill set in itself. You have to learn how to work, efficiently. You got to prioritize so you don't, you're not trying to do everything at once in a reactive way, but rather you're, maintaining that work-life balance. You have to work efficiently, manage your time wisely, understand and communicate your needs effectively. It's helpful to work for an office or a company that understands the need for a healthy work-life balance. It can be very challenging, but it can be done.
Well, work-life balance, that becomes very difficult for us, especially as TIPOs, because while we work with a lot of passionate people in the archaeological field, for us, it is extremely personal. Every time a site is found as Quapaw, those were our people. Every time there is an inadvertent discovery of a grave, that was our person. It's very personal for us. So that makes it even harder. You have a tendency to go, let me just check this last email. Let me just push through this last review. And so you have to become very disciplined on how you're approaching your work. I've known at least 5 TIPOs who in the first 3 years end up with shingles because we stress ourselves out so much. It's just kind of, it's highly personal. And in the tribal world, we're the only ones looking at these. So it kind of feels like you're the only one standing between the destruction of this site that could be vitally important to your people's history and that not being destroyed. And so we have to be very mindful of how much pressure we put on ourselves, because a lot of what we do in the tribal world is focused on protecting that past and having something to pass to our future. We also have to spend a lot of time convincing certain sects of the population that we do exist. Hi, we're here. Sorry. Throw that plug in. Quapaws exist. But we also see, especially in our office, where the majority of us are very involved community members, we're involved in our committees that serve our tribal government. We're involved in our Native American church. We're involved in all these different aspects of our social life that we see a blending. We're together at least 4 days out of the month outside the office together, and so it can kind of take over our whole lives, and we have to separate out, this is that work thing, and this is what I do to serve my people. But even a lot of times when we're doing our work thing, you might call and nobody answers because we're next door at the senior center judging their Halloween costume, which we do every year. We judge the Halloween costumes. Or maybe we are, working over at the daycare to teach the kids something, or we're working a tribal meeting. Everything kind of blends for us. And so we have to be careful that we balance that. I am not good at balancing that. I'll admit it. I was in the hospital a couple of weeks ago and I was telling bring me my laptop. I need to do some work, So that is something that we all have to get better at. But as much as I don't like to support it, I like to see that tendency is there because it tells me that my people are taking their jobs passionately. And that's what we have to do to protect what we have left.
Cool. Thank you guys. And I definitely agree with the work-life balance struggle, especially with technology and everything. You can do work from anywhere now. So it really becomes kind of a blending situation for sure. And depending on where you work and the expectations, it can get a little tricky, but we're all trying our best. It's okay. We're all trying our best. So I'm gonna, I think, combine the last two questions because I think it'll flow a little bit better. Sorry, Michelle. But the first question is, what is your favorite thing about your job? And then on the opposite side, what is your least favorite thing about your job? And we're going to start with Duncan for the last combo question.
Okay, sure. Well, my favorite thing about my job is when I get to see students that I've worked with over the course of 3 or 4 years, who are focused and have a genuine interest in archaeology, when I see them get hired, right? And in particular, get hired in Arkansas, because that's largely my focus, is committed to Arkansas archaeology. And so that is really rewarding for me when I see that happen. So teaching as a whole, students that come to me and you know, in the first couple of years, they don't know anything from a sherd to a lithic, and then 2 years later, they're doing a directed study and writing a report and having some leadership that they are then hopefully taking towards what they can apply in their job that they would get elsewhere. I was a little sidebar here. I was very happy to see that the survey hired one of my students for WRI, Ashley Hansen. So that made me feel really proud. So those kind of things make me feel good about my job. The least favorite thing about my job, it changes day by day. Any other job that I've had, certainly administration, maybe some personnel challenges here and there, that's going to be anybody's job. So those things are not very fun. Sometimes when I have students that I expect more out of them, and I try to push them a little bit, and so that is challenging and sometimes frustrating. But when those students succeed in that, then we move into the part that I enjoy. So there's not really a whole lot that I don't like about my job, apart from just the daily routine and managing things and the stuff we've talked about, the work-life balance and those kinds of things as a whole. So.
So my favorite thing about my job, so CRM and archaeology in general, we never stop learning. We've all kind of acknowledged that, and that's one of the the draws to doing something like this. It never ends, the learning. In CRM, we're kind of at the front lines of preservation. Preservation of places that are significant as archaeological sites or historic structures, and places that are significant to Native American tribes or other descendant communities. It also applies to the preservation of information. With the pace of all different types of development today, sites are disappearing all the time, and we frequently find sites that aren't known about previously. They can present new information on land use history that we might not have known. They can locate places of significance to descendant communities that they didn't know about. And if that information doesn't get recorded or those places preserved in place, they're destroyed. It's a non-renewable resource. Archaeological sites and historic structures are, and they're gone forever once they're gone. So I think that's an important thing. That's one of the things I really like about CRM. Least favorite thing about my job, I'd say that one of the challenges today, particularly, is that there's a kind of a work shortage, as the employee shortage or archaeology shortage in CRM, and so there's just so much work out there to do, and it's really challenging to take on your part of it as a CRM office or firm, and so just the pace of development's really ramped up. The types of projects we're involved in is really ramped up, and there's just a shortage of staff. So that's my major complaint about what we do today.
I love my job. I absolutely adore it. I wish somebody had told me like 20 years ago, hey, this is what you should be doing, because it's just great. But I think my absolute favorite thing is that, you guys, I get paid to geek out over history, which is so cool. Like, I think that's great. One of our current projects is transcribing audio recordings from 1977. And so I'm getting to hear all these people who were very elderly when I was young and who, these ladies that I learned to cook from the people they taught to cook, straight from them, how we do this. And it's just like my absolute favorite thing ever. My absolute least favorite thing about my job that just sometimes we don't have to do it as often anymore. It's getting more rare. But having to explain to professionals, to high-level folks, what a sovereign nation is. It gets very tense. It gets very, it's not easily explained to people. And having to convince them that, one, we are a sovereign nation. Two, the Quapaws do exist, and we didn't just fall out of the sky at some point in like 1700. Those things, they kind of wear on you, but then you get to balance that out by sharing all this wonderful stuff that you've learned with anyone who will sit still. You don't even have to sit still. I'll talk to you while you're moving about it. That's great. But it's a really great job, and we get to serve our people, and we get to do things that are totally nerdy and that we absolutely love. And we get to work with wonderful groups of people from all different walks of life. And I don't know why everyone's not doing this, really.
I'm going to flip the questions because I would hate to end on a sour note. So my least favorite thing about the job is the days where it feels like a job. Because as much as I do really love this and I have a lot of fun doing this, there are days where it's like, uh, I mentioned earlier I'm doing a ceramic analysis. There are days where I've sat down and I realize like I've looked at 600 sherds today and this feels like I'm losing my mind in tedium. Um, or I'll have a day where like I have to drive up to Fayetteville to grab 30 boxes of artifacts and then turn around the same day and drive back to Magnolia. And that's just, there are just days where it feels like work. But my favorite thing about the job for sure is when I get to present my research and I get to say, here's a thing I looked at, and here's what I think is happening here based on all the data I've collected and looking at similar work and looking through like this theoretical lens. And the days I get to be really, really nerdy and tell a lot of people like, hey, this is a really cool thing that nobody has ever really looked at before, and you guys get to be the first ones to hear about it. That's always fun.
Sweet, thank you. I think my favorite part about my job and just being in archaeology in general is just the amount of puns that I've been able to collect in my belt. Like anytime someone says for sure or sure, I think sure. And I think that's really fun. So
That's my least favorite part of my job is listening and make puns about anything that is said in the office.
no one's forcing you to stay in your job, Michelle. It's okay. You can leave. I'm just kidding. Well, thank you guys so much for all of your awesome responses, and I really got enjoyed learning about each of your positions more specifically. But I think I can speak for Michelle too when I say we're ready to take some Q&A questions from people in the Zoom. If anyone wants to shoot anything into the chat or unmute yourselves and ask and direct them either to a specific person or maybe just in general, and people can take turns answering again as we need.
I have one if we're going to go ahead and take questions to start. I just wanted to speak a little bit about the kind of the current climate in archaeology, given the massive changes that are coming down the pike with cut to government staffing and funding. And so I just wanted to, not to bring down a sour note, but I want to talk a little bit about how, we as a discipline are planning to either ride out the wave or how we're going to have that discussion with our students.
I mean, I guess I could address that or make mention to that. Because students are coming to me and concerned about their next steps in the current climate and so forth. And my attitude to them is focus on what you're doing right now. Get your head down in the ground. Focus on this. Um, uh, you know, try not to be overly stressed about things that may or may not be in your control, and to, just focus on the now and what you're doing here at the university and make the most out of your experiences that are happening right now. I mean, that's really all. I can't do much more than that. Well, maybe I can, but I choose to just allow them to focus on what they're doing in the moment and to try to empower them with the confidence that they need to make their own stand or to make their own voice heard, and to pursue those things with the confidence that they may gain through my instruction or through my guidance.
Thank
Yeah, I
you. I
don't
think I
have.
might have just asked that as for out of therapy my own self, right?
Okay.
So
I'm gonna say, I know that, I mean, if you're a member of SAA, they've been putting out a lot of stuff and they're posting a number of meetings, kind of support group sort of meetings. And SEAC is working on a resource page that should host all of those kinds of things as well, um, or links to those sorts of events and like other things like that. So that's not super helpful, but that's kind of uh, all I've got. I don't have students myself that I'm working with, but I mean, we're at the survey, we're kind of just going forward. As we're going forward, we're hosting the training program this summer. We're going to continue to work with the public and train students and train anyone who's interested and keep teaching and doing what we're doing. So kind of think that's where we are. Just, keep putting a good face on archaeology that the public does want to see, and show how important the stuff that we're doing is and that people do want to know about it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I have students that have come into my office and just about in tears, and I just tell them what you can do is here. You can work in the community, you can get out there, you can do volunteer work, and you can make people aware of what you're doing, so you can do grassroots, right? And there are these bigger picture things that are happening. Just focus on your contribution to that at the moment.
Does anybody else have any questions?
I'll speak for just a second. Just, at CRM, the historic preservation laws, of course, are, we're all kind of waiting to see what happens, of course. But, I'll say that a lot of companies that hire archaeologists and environmental people, their project timelines are not, it doesn't make sense for a 4-year administration for them to completely change course, what they're planning to do. And so, we're trying to stay optimistic in that regard, that a lot of these companies are not going to not do archaeology or whatever because they think they don't have to, if that might reverse in 4 years. So we're staying hopeful in that regard. I'll say that for certain project types too, increasingly we've seen that clients will hire for cultural resources even without a requirement these days, just to make sure that they are not running into some terrible PR nightmare. And so we're trying to stay optimistic that the work's going to continue to come, and we'll get to continue to do what we do in historic preservation.
All right. Well, if you didn't see the note in the chat, Jason is having a field school at Lyon College this summer. So if you're looking for field schools, look into that. Does anyone else have any questions, comments, wrapping up thoughts? I guess just one other shameless plug. The survey posted a job today for a archaeogeophysical assistant at our Fayetteville office. So if anyone's looking for a job doing that, look at our website. And if you're in Central Arkansas on March 29th, come to Plum Bayou Mounds Archaeological State Park. Billy will be there. We're having Celebrate Archaeology Day at the park. There will be a bunch of different people doing different archaeology things. Billy and other members of Quapaw Nation are going to be cooking traditional foods, and you can tour the site and see the museum and all that kind of stuff. So we'd love to see you out there. And I don't know if Jillian, do you have anything else to wrap up? Otherwise, we can. No.
I mean, I guess I'll just say, for all the students out there, and obviously for other working professionals, if you stumble upon students or other folks that are needing support or needing opportunities, always feel free to reach out to me, Michelle, any of us on the panel. I think I can speak for all of us when we say we're happy to help, budding archaeologists and people with any resources that they may need. So just shameless plug for all of us on the Zoom call. But yeah, I think that's about it for me. And happy Archaeology Month still. It's still March. It's crazy.
I know it's barely started March, but here we are. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, thank you so much to our panelists. I really appreciate all of your thoughts and opinions and perspectives. And we will get this up on our YouTube channel for hopefully more people to watch, because I think this was some really good information, and hopefully it helps somebody get a job or get some ideas about what they want to do in the future. So thank you all very much, and I will stop recording and get off of here.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.